It is the quiet before the storm, the eve of the NCAA tournament starting 2025. Michigan being involved. They'll play late tomorrow night. We're here ready to talk about it and a little bit of football. Welcome in to Good Afternoon Michigan Football here on Rivals.com, the Maize and Blue Review. I'm Dennis Fithian, ready to get this one underway. And it's pretty straightforward. You've got the NCAA tournament getting ready to tip up. And you've got Michigan getting ready to take part in it late tomorrow night. Might be a little blurry-eyed on Friday morning if you're a Maize and Blue fan. But that's just what you got to do when you're a fan of your team and they put them on at an odd hour. You're just going to have to tough it out. Your boss is going to have to be understanding and all those kind of things. And also we've got now spring practice, and that's where we're going to start. Now, spring practice, we're going to talk football, and then we'll talk basketball. So, if you would like to get involved, you get a question regarding Michigan football and or Michigan basketball, well, you just mosey on over to the feedback feature on YouTube, and you just, fire up a question like Hadley is talking about the number 12 seeds in the bracket. Would you rather play to see Michigan play than the San Diego team? And do you see any Cinderellas making it to the Final Four? Yeah, Hadley, it's the dreaded 12 seed. I usually pick, 3. Sometimes I just go with all 4, just, straight out. I used to, Hadley, and I know a lot of people do this week. I mean, they've got their, spreadsheets, Ken Palm, and they're just thinking it through, and, they're, going through their brackets before they put them out. And, you'll have, countless people that you can talk with. I go back myself to, I don't know, even 20, 25 years. I remember I used to had satellite, and I used to buy the college basketball package where you'd get all of the games. And I would watch, and I would try to watch every team. And I sat there and I tried to do all of it. The worst that I would do in terms of, picking a bracket and having success in it was those years that I would watch the teams. I don't know. I just, I'm watching teams, and I watch teams from players I like, off of, other than Michigan. Of course, I'm watching all their games. And so it came to a point where I just said, I just enjoy it. Now, from a gambling standpoint, sure, I'll at some point tomorrow, I'll get in there and I'll throw a couple bucks on a team here or there. I would say over the last 20 years, I've been involved in maybe a half dozen where you're putting 10 or 20 bucks into a bracket. I know a lot of people are like, wow, that's like a rite of passage. I mean, that's what the NCAA tournament's all about. And I know that. I think for most people, that is the fun of it. You always hear people when you're talking about paying players, or they say, well, look at the gambling in the brackets. That's all everybody cares about. And yeah, I mean, I get that. I'm not like that myself. I will watch these next 4 days, and there's great, thrills and upsets and everything else. But unless you're just really into it, you just really care about your bracket. You're looking at, there's my bracket. And so, but it gives you a way to go through it. So I always pick all of the 12 seeds. I'm not going to this year. I want to pick Michigan to win, but Michigan's got a dreaded 12 seed. We know all the things and hurdles that they face with the early, having to go on a Thursday, all of that they got stuck with. I'm going with Michigan just because they got stuck with all of these things, and they deserve a victory So that doesn't do very good. Like if you're a gambler, you're saying, well, strategy of hope, and you think that you're rooting for them because they deserve it, because they got the shaft. I wouldn't recommend you put any money down on Michigan. This game is a lot like a toss-up. I would have to look through those other ones. Headley, the 12 seeds, but I haven't put the kind of energy into looking to see about the Cinderellas. I liked Texas A&M, who Michigan could play in the second round earlier in the year when I saw a little bit of them. Then I watched them play Auburn, and I really liked them. They beat Auburn, but they're sitting there and they're a pretty high seed, so they're not even an underdog. Gonzaga and Clemson, Louisville. Those are three teams that I'll put out there: Gonzaga, Louisville, and Clemson. And I'd have to look at them. Not a lot of people are picking St. John's because they don't have great offense. I mean, they're a 2 seed. I really like watching St. John's. I like watching Marquette too. 2 weeks ago, I watched those two teams play a double overtime thriller, and it was the most entertaining game of the year. So as I was watching it, I'm like, I'll be picking these teams. So I picked teams as I watched some players that I like. Marquette's got this guard who is very creative and gets to the hole and can score on anyone. But yeah, when it comes down to it, I think Duke and Florida, Duke, Florida, Auburn, and Houston. I mean, those are the 1 seeds. Taking 2 or 3 of those teams, I like. Auburn jacks up. I mean, they have an imposing player inside, but man, and they have really good guards, but they shoot wild shots. They're very entertaining to play. Houston, I have taken in the past, and that doesn't mean that I shouldn't take them this year. They're great on the glass. I love the style that they play. They just come up short. Maybe it could be their year. And Florida has been the best team. And Duke has got the pick with Flag, and Duke is Duke. As I had a friend in broadcasting who used to always say, Duke is Duke, so you pick them. So yeah, pick 2 of those 1 seeds and just and then throw it out there. But if I had to pick a team to win it, I don't know. So I don't know if I really like Florida and Duke, and those are the 2 teams that I think are probably going to win it. So that's why I don't even think I'm going to do a bracket, because I'm not really sure I want to root for Duke or root for Florida. Last year, one of those gambling sites was giving a free $5 out, and I said, well, let me put it on a big-time long shot. And I came back and I put it on the favorite in UConn, and I won $45 or something, $45, whatever it was. And it wasn't bad. And I did root for UConn then. So we'll see. We'll see if I get a free $5. We're going to talk football, but Scott's asking some basketball. Did Rick Pitino do a little cheating with this St. John's team? I mean, I don't know what's cheating anymore. Is cheating what? Paying players? Knocking somebody off to, banging waitresses in the back of an Italian restaurant? I mean, what are you talking about with Rick Pitino? Sure, basketball, they used to pay players, but now everybody can. So what kind of cheating is he actually going to do? I mean, it's like taping the other teams in person. I don't even know if you could do that in basketball, or if that's something, or if that was just that little bylaw in Michigan, or I'm sorry, bylaw in football. So talking about cheating it just seems a little odd, to me from nowadays from Michigan fans. Who cares what Rick Pitino did? I don't know. Can you cheat in college basketball? What are you doing to actually do it? I don't know. It's a touchy subject for some people and everything, but I'm not really sure that this is the time or the place to do it. All right. So with that, I'm not going anywhere with that one. How about spring ball? So there's a good look at Rashawn Benny from MGO Blue. Up through that picture up there, you see Benny. He's got the protective helmet on, and he's wearing Mason Graham's 55. And Benny went from his 26 to his 55. And it looks good on him. That's a big jersey to fill, Mason Graham's jersey. But, Benny's the man at the point of attack for Michigan. Very important for Michigan's defense this year. And so I'm glad he's got that double nickel. I'm turning 55 this year. So, a big fan of Rayshon Benny. And you see some pictures of, guys just going through practice and you say, oh, okay. But for those of you that might be just listening on the podcast, Rayshon Benny is taking this. I don't know if it's an attachment or if he has ripped this cushion off of the so tackling it, but he's really ferociously tackling this cushion, and I'm here for it. I'm excited about it. One thing about spring ball, like people that watch this, you guys are all really big fans of Michigan football, and you're quite, well, tell us something that, what's happening in practice. And I get that. I completely understand. You want anything. You're starving out there for any little morsel. I think anybody that's throwing anything out there and, the first couple of days is kind of just leading you on or just throwing your stuff out there just to do it. But, hey, you got to do what you got to do. I was down in Ann Arbor on Monday listening to Wink and Lindsay Chip, and those guys really didn't have much to say at all about any of the players. In their defense, so what are they going to say? That they're not out there practicing yet. There was just a conditioning, and then they're brought in there and they say, hey, who's making a move? Well, they don't know as of yet. And as I've said now, I don't know how many more times I will say it, but if I am putting somebody behind Bryce Underwood on the hype train 1.0, everybody would put Bryce Underwood. He's the most hype player ever is Bryce Underwood. I will put in 2025 for Michigan, my hyped up player number 2 heading into spring ball based on, well, he was an excellent recruit. Oh, I got to talk to him on signing day. He's got great credentials out of high school. And then Wink, who about 10 times on Monday said, yeah, I'm not really getting into specific players. I'm not really talking about anyone, even if you asked about the player specifically. But then he mentioned Shamari Earls when he started talking about the corners. And I was going to say I've been around long enough to, I don't know. My read, I was just watching about 5 feet from Wink. And when Wink said Earl's face, there was a twinkle. There he lit up. Shamari Earls, he said, and he didn't really mention anybody else. So Earls is on the hype train. I was going to say, you're excited about everyone and everything else. Early on, it's Earls. Now, this reminds me a little bit if I was going to a fancy restaurant and had just sat down and got a text and like, well, what do you think of it? I'm like, I don't know. I haven't even looked at the menu yet. Give me a chance. They're only in day 2 of practice. Maybe they brought some, water to the table, but I don't know. They brought the bread. It's very nice bread. I got some pictures, some very nice bread. So I don't, trying to say, let's get some pads on. Let's let them go through for, 3 or 4 days before we, can say, I don't even know if they are allowing people. I don't even know how many onlookers are there would be able to determine like, oh yeah. Now look, if I was there, I'd be looking at the wide receivers and, who's standing out. Look at the DBs. I'd be looking at all of the guys that came into the transfer portal and offensive defense and all of these freshmen. I know how they look. Hey, who's this guy? And so maybe there would be, having said all of that, if you want to know what's going on up to the second accurately, this is one of the great reasons to join up. There's a lot of great reasons. This is one of them. Spring practice, spring intel. Join the Maize and Blue Review today by going to michigan.rivals.com. that's how you get it done. Now, I'll go through some of the other stuff, just some things, and these are things that I'm just thinking about when it comes to spring. And like I said, you can always throw anything you want out if you got a question, something you're hearing, something that you just want an answer to. I'm here for it. I was thinking about Underwood, and you hear this a lot. I think I've said it. That, they'll go into the non-conference, and if it's Mikey Keene who gets to start, Underwood will play, and he'll play in the non-conference, and then they've got their 3 non-conference games, then they go to Nebraska, and then they have a bye week. So they go New Mexico, Oklahoma, Central, Nebraska for the first 4 weeks. Then there's a bye week, and then they're home for Wisconsin. That was my initial prediction for when Underwood would get the nod. But after last week of Underwood going out to California, being on the front cover for EA Sports, going on the Rich Eisen show, and talking about multiple Heismans, and it's over for Ohio State, I think Underwood's starting from day one. Now you say, wow, well, you really bought into the hype. I'm buying into Sharon Moore letting a 17-year-old kid go out there and go on a national show. So I'm buying a little bit into that angle. The other part that I'm buying into is the more I think about it, I don't want to see any 2-quarterback system. Let's, reset last year. I didn't like, I had Scar over here saying, well, it means they have a lot of depth. No, it doesn't. It normally means you don't have a quarterback. Now, you understand that with Underwood, it just might take a little bit to get his, feet wet and everything else. So I am half allowing that if Keene starts against New Mexico, that we'd see a little Bryce Underwood. But I just want to see Bryce Underwood. I'd rather see him sooner than later. And later is the Wisconsin game. Let's get him out there. And let's put him up on the horse and let's go. Do I care that he's just going to turn 18 in August and you're talking about, wow, you're expecting him to be the starter for day one? Yes, I do now. Yes, I do. I think that he should start right out of the gate and let's see it. Because if they're going to play 2, let's say, again, going back to New Mexico, Keene starts, and sometime in the third quarter, is Michigan going to be up by 20? Does it matter? And then we're going to see Underwood, and they're going to give him a little taste? Well, if that's going to be the strategy, you can't really do that against Oklahoma. You can't go in thinking, oh, well, we're going to give Underwood a little bit of taste. Probably not, because that game, you can't go in. That game is likely going to be a 1-score game in the fourth quarter. So you might see a little bit of Underwood against New Mexico in the opener, but you're likely not going to see him against Oklahoma if he's not the starter. And then it's going to be back and kind of a reset of game 1 against Central. You hopefully will be able to, put the chips away and then be able to get Underwood in there. But it's not like you're going to then be able to do that against Nebraska. So, I don't know, just thinking about it, the scenario of you're going to play him to get his feet wet, you're not going to see a whole lot of Bryce Underwood in the first month of the season if they're planning on playing 2 quarterbacks. I hope he seizes it. I hope they start. I hope you don't see Keene or any of the other quarterbacks until the fourth quarter, until the game is out of hand, and they're just coming in mop-up time. That's where I'm at with the quarterback position in Michigan. Underwood, I'm expecting him to be the starter, and, Moore's got him out there up on the horse, speaking for the team in March. And, he's making statements. He sounds like he's the starter. And I know, again, I'm not reading too much into that, except that Moore was just, hey, yeah, go ahead. You're you're the number one guy and number one recruit, and Rich is a Michigan man and everything else. Sure. But now he's. I've heard and seen enough. Underwood is the starter. And then thinking about how it's going to work with two quarterbacks, you're not going to see him for a month. I want to see him. And if he's good enough, put him out there. And if it's close, have him to be the starter. And even though I said this, and I'm not going to act like he's going to be a bust or something, if Keene gets the start against New Mexico, then I'm going to be disappointed. I'm going to be disappointed that the guy that was number one and that, Moore was allowing to go out and do national shows, and that was, talking about, winning multiple Heisman trophies, couldn't beat out Mikey Keene for the starting job. So that's where I'm at with Underwood. That's how I feel. I'm not, I know I'm making it sound like I could be angry or something. I'm not angry at anyone. I just started thinking it over. I'm angry with the idea. No, angry is the right idea. I'm not connecting with the idea that it's going to be a 2 quarterback system for the first month of the season to get Underwood's feet wet. What that translates to me, the more that I talk about it, is this is Mikey Keene's team, and you're going to see Underwood a little bit in some cameos in game 1 and game 3, and then who knows? I don't like the idea of, I would say, of course, you shouldn't like the idea either, that they've got some kind of plan for 2 quarterbacks playing both of these guys against Oklahoma, at Oklahoma. The idea is they're going to play 2 quarterbacks or rotate them in, and they have a plan to play Bryce Underwood a lot if he's not the starter against Nebraska on the road. I don't like that idea. I want the starter out there. And you should too. And so should Sharon Moore, and so should Chip Lindsey. These guys need to be the leader of the team. They need the reps. They need the familiarity with the running backs, with the offensive line. They need all of that. Put your best foot forward. Underwood starts on August the 30th against New Mexico. That's how I feel now today. So I'll take some feedback on that. I also wanted to something that came up in the NFL today that didn't bug me, but I wondered why that Michigan never went to it. And I'll get to that coming up here straight ahead. And don't worry, a little basketball talk as well, if you're interested in that. Let's see. It's good to see Richard, who's back. But, Richard, I'm more interested is that a moon? Because I thought that was just the egg, but it's kind of looks like it could be a half moon, which I'm in on. Ferris has been working on a basketball model. I like that. Juju likes Moten coming in and being 6'6", 295 as a freshman. Well, let's see about Moten. Let's look here. Travis Moten. There he is. Let's see over here. Sorry. He is one of the 7. Wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that are in for spring. And that is pretty nice. I'll take your word for it. They did have just a roster that was out. And maybe he should be somebody that you look at just sizing it up. I've already mentioned that I think Earls is going to be a breakout freshman on the defensive side. Everyone is going to predict Underwood. Chip Lindsey, when asked about left tackle, he couldn't recall Andrew Babaloa's name immediately, but he didn't mention Link, and then he was like, Babaloa, pretty good. So I don't know. It's the first time out there. He could just be like, I'm coming out here to try not to say anything about anyone. And when it comes to freshman offensive linemen, I don't know if that'd be great news if Babaloa was the starter right out of the gate. But I do go back. There's going to be somebody. Like Scott says, who's going to be the spring breakout player? Most of all, like the spring hype and what people say in the spring, you've got to take it with a grain of salt. And it's just a lot of fun. And there will be, and then there's the one side where people say, I've heard of 100 players down through the years that have been called out. Oh, he had a great spring, and then you never even saw him. The following year, or they never even made a move at all for the rest of their career. Way back in the day, I used to give an award out called the Grady Brooks Award. He was a Michigan linebacker. And Lloyd every year is like, Grady Brooks has had an outstanding spring, and then you never see him. I was like, wait a second. So there is that side. You put too much into the spring game, but it was only a couple months ago where Sharon Moore was up in front of everybody, and he was asked about Mason Graham and, where he would get drafted and how good of a pro he was going to be. And he said, or when did he first think that Mason Graham was going to be, an outstanding player? And he said, Trevor Keegan in spring ball, like where all of these freshmen are right now. They're in their second day. Sharon said that Trevor Keegan came to him during spring ball and said that Mason Graham was the best defensive tackle that he's ever gone against. And, you keep in mind that Graham, they had Jenkins, they had a list. Mozzie Smith was still on the team who would go into the first round. And then, Jenkins was there. And you're thinking, wait a second. He's not even talking about at Michigan. Keegan was saying this is the best, but he was going against future pro guys and a future first round pick and a kid that had not even been in class for Michigan or just started in the spring. So guys can show up. So as much as we, it's hype and you hear any little thing, there will be somebody that will be a breakout player, and that's what we're all here for. You love to hear, and you'd love to hear in Earl's right now, and somebody putting Moten's name up there. You'd love to see like that Sharon Moore when he talks in a week or so, maybe this Friday, I don't know, whenever he does, says Travis Moten's just got a great motor and can't be blocked, something like that. Hard part when you're playing maize on blue is that when you'll talk to somebody that watches a scrimmage and you'll say, boy, they just couldn't stop the defensive line. They just couldn't block them. They're like, you're thinking, whoa, what about Michigan's offensive line? Or you start saying the wide receivers were tearing up the secondary. Ooh, you never know when it comes down to that stuff, what you're thinking about when it comes down to it. I'm with Scott, thinking Benny will be the star. I don't know. Is there a question going on with Cole Sullivan? I was thinking that Cole Sullivan was one of those players to watch, was showed out in the spring game last year, and was going to be somebody that was going to be right there with all the linebackers. But so when you ask what's going on with him, you make it sound like there's something going on, like negative or something. MW 1, 2, 3, 4. Underwood should clearly start. We will probably lose some games regardless. Why not go with the generational talent? Well, again, you've been watching me here, so I agree. What I don't like is this part, that we'll probably lose some games regardless. Yeah, so I don't think they're going undefeated. So saying that we'll probably lose some games regardless. All right. Yeah, why not go with them? to be careful with some of that. So Michigan's not sitting here with Tom Brady on their roster. But I do recall myself in 1998 when Michigan came out and lost their first game at Notre Dame. And then Michigan came back and lost game number 2 against Syracuse. I was saying, why not take Tom Brady and put him on the bench and put Drew Henson in there? He's a generational talent. They're 0-2. Why delay the inevitable? Let's get Henson out there. Nothing against Tom Brady. But they don't have, Tom Brady. They might have a Drew Henson, but they don't have a Tom Brady in that scenario. Ben Hall, a choice to be a breakout. Yeah, running back. Jordan Marshall was fabulous in the ReliaQuest Bowl. And we know that Ben Hall was the number 2 back. He didn't do a whole lot in the ReliaQuest Bowl. And we know that they brought in Justice Haynes from Bama. And so you got, I think, those 3 guys, but that's a pretty nice choice, Richard and Hall. Let's see, people weighing in on my thoughts on Underwood. Well, Richard says he will make freshman mistakes, but we expect it. Can't be worse than last season. It's all good. Well, let's not say it can't be worse than last season. You're right. It can be worse than last season, but I don't want anything with the quarterback position to have any semblance of last season. Mar says Michigan is going into the playoffs on a business trip, period. Now, I don't know whether Mar is talking about the basketball team or football team. I'm going to say both apply. I'm expecting Michigan to make the college football playoff. Michigan basketball is in Denver, ready to see what they can do over the weekend, to see if they can punch through to the Sweet 16. So if they are on a business trip, I think I understand what you're talking about. Juju talking about Hall won't see a lot of snaps unless injury or a blowout. We don't use our third back a lot if our 2 guys are healthy. Well, Juju, you're talking about what's happening right now. What happens in spring, it is a very fluid situation. There is a world where Hall comes out and he's better than Haynes and he's better than Marshall. That he has gone through and he's standing on his business, and it's a business trend. And his idea was, I want snaps, I want carries. And he moves up the depth chart. That's what spring is for. So while I agree with your overall premise here that Michigan doesn't use their third back a lot, spring, you're moving around a lot and you get your opportunities. And it might not be anything against Marshall, and it might not be anything against Hayes. It just might be that Hall is going to be that guy. So, and we have seen that kind of stuff before. I would have never in a million years thought that Mason Graham, remember that buzz a week before this? Not only is Mason Graham doing great in spring ball, but he's going to start over everyone. He's in there. He's their best defensive tackle. You'd have said, well, he's a freshman. There's no way that he's going to be in there. Yes, he is. Yes, he was. So it can happen. And especially at a skill position. I don't know. Look, talking about other people or ripping each other, that's for other shows. I know, like, maybe other shows like doing that kind of stuff. Let's, since I use a lot of the feedback, let's just stay on topic here and talk about Michigan football right now. Hey, you screw up and say something about basketball, that's fine. I agree with that sentiment. Oh, yeah, football team. Yeah, business. Spring is business. Yeah, this is something I wonder as well. Walter's playing. Juju has come back, and he hears what I'm saying about it's a fluid situation, but then he's going to eat onions, raw onions, if Ben Hall's Michigan's best back. Well, we'll have to save that, Juju. I wouldn't predict that myself, but there we are. So, yeah, you think about the spring, and the reason that this is the most highly anticipated is you have so many guys. I just look at the portal on the defensive side. Would it surprise me, one of Payne or Williams, you would feel almost has to be a starter come August the 30th against New Mexico, to be down there in the defensive line against next to Rayshon Benny. Would it surprise anybody if Bowles is in there in the rotation with Houseman as a linebacker, and Barham is mostly out on the edge, and we don't know with Rolder, but that is not going to be a huge shock. I have a picture of Bowles up. That's not a shocker. In corner, they're going to play a lot of different guys, and safety from these Metcalfs brothers that come from Arkansas, and Caleb Anderson. If we just go back through how things worked the last 2 years, you didn't remember Wallace didn't come on right away, but by the end of the year, he was fabulous at corner. And then who was the guy last year? It was Amir Hall from Albany. So, maybe the same thing when you're talking about somebody like Caleb Anderson on defense. And then on the freshman, this is the offense, rightfully so, headed by Underwood. And he would be a headliner on anybody's team, but Earls, again, Buzz, day one Buzz, Shamari Earls, the NOB, as highly touted as they come. And that's not, Nathan Marshall isn't in for spring, part of the decorated Michigan class, and one of these other guys. I mean, if it's not going to be Earls or the NOB, somebody else will be in there and will be in the mix and will be a surprise. On the offensive side, we're pretty sure about Underwood. I don't know if we would want to see Babaloa or any of the offensive linemen, but let's circle these two guys. I am very interested, I would say very excited, very hopeful that we hear some good things about Jamar Browder and or Andrew Marsh. This is something that you want. I hope that when Ron Bellamy, if I go down there and Bellamy's the coach, I don't want to just hear that. Yeah, well, these guys are, they're learning the system, and yeah, no, Ron, what do they got? Is one of them a dog? Is one of them the real deal? Is, go out on a limb for me, something. Maybe I'll say it just like that. Michigan fans want a star receiver. I want to hear that Andrew Marsh or Jamar Browder are turning heads. These guys are fabulous route runners. They've got great hands, and they just are ready. They're ready to compete for to be a starter day one. I don't know how about Bellamy would ever say anything close to that, but even if he mentions one of those guys in that, he's a grown man. Oh, got to get your decoder out at times when it comes there. And that's the same thing with clearly McCulley, who's big and is sort of a veteran. Haynes, I mean, there's a lot of excitement on the portal guys. I don't know how much excited about you're getting about a guard, but McCulley and Simpson, Haynes and McCulley, definitely. And I put Keene. I hope Keene's a nice backup. Because you never know. You might need him for a snap or two if, Underwood loses his helmet or something. So hopefully you have Mikey Keene. And it's looking pretty good. So that's it. Yeah, for sure. They need a wide receiver that's as good as the quarterback. They've got a bunch of wideouts. They need 1, 2, or 3 or 4 stepping up. They do need a true number one. They need a dog. You'd like to hear Bellamy say he's a dog. My antenna will be like, whoa, dog. I like it. Juju, TJ Guy did just speak an hour ago. So Juju saying that TJ said that Jamar showing out already. There, see, no, that's nice. Nice info, Juju. I don't know where you're getting it from, but I do know that guy just spoke just a while ago. So there is that. And you feel good about it if you're a Michigan fan. All right, so we get to the NCAA tournament. And Michigan's chances. And so they're a favorite, but not a very big one. And as I heard, it was Jay Billis yesterday. I was watching him do, pardon the interruption. He said everyone is, didn't say it was just a popular pick, but he didn't say everyone, but it was like trendy. I think it's the word he used. Trendy pick is picking against Michigan in round 1. Well, if you're a 5 seed, automatically people are going to be picking against you. If you were the last team to play on Sunday and then had to play on a Thursday, there are going to be teams that are going to pick against you. And in the high altitude, sure enough, that San Diego, the first time that they're ever in the tournament, that they have to do that as well. But I don't know, in San Diego, you can be in the beach 1 minute, and in the next 10 minutes, you're going to be up in the mountains and, training there to get, but I don't know how big of a factor that is. But I do know that San Diego, with the time change, it's not like they're flying out east and they would have to, because that can mess with teams and things. Michigan, meanwhile, is playing at 10 o'clock. That's against them. Michigan's got a lot that is stacked against them. When you hear something about San Diego, it's, they're very good in forcing turnovers. They're like, oh, is that right? Michigan's got, they just won 3 games against really good competition in the second best conference. So that they've got that going for them. And this is what everybody's dream is, to play in the NCAA tournament. So it's not all landslide against Michigan, but the turnover part and the guard play situation, Michigan was great against Purdue and not turning the ball over. They weren't so awesome against Maryland. And then Wisconsin was just a battle of wills, where U of M was able to win it. But it bears repeating. Michigan's got one guard that's not great at breaking the press and running the team, and Trey Donaldson, but he's okay. He's good. He's okay to good. But after that, their second best ball handler is Danny Wolf. And Danny Wolf is great for a 7-footer handling the ball. Danny Wolf as your second best ball handler and facilitator is below average. And then the rest of your guards, Damari Burnett, he's a great spot up shooter, and he can also put it on the floor and drive. But Damari Burnett, he's well below average in passing, and even lower than that when it comes to dribbling. And then Roddy Gale, out of, I don't know if you took 500 guards that are going to be playing in the NCAA tournament, Gale will be, $499 or something. There's not going to be guys, not overall game, just talking about dribbling and passing. He's going to be $499, maybe $500. There's not going to be anybody that's going to be worse than him. And so then you're talking about Kason. So that's the tough spot when you get into a situation like this. I do think that they're going to win on Thursday, and let's get it going for the weekend. Let's get to the Sweet 16. Let's see what that will be like. You can come back at me and say, "Well, boy, here they are, the Sweet 16." I don't expect them to get to the Sweet 16, but yeah, be hopeful. Get excited about it. I think they deserve that after what they did last week. They deserve a prediction of at least winning their first game. You might feel they deserve even more, but that's where it can be a difficult time coming in. You don't want to hear that it could be tough for Michigan, and because you're just a fan and you want the best for them, but you also just don't want to be reactionary. So the time to be, if they would have lost that first game to Purdue, everybody would be sitting here saying, "Oh, they're done." I mean, it's over. They didn't lose to Purdue. So if you were just sitting there as a Michigan fan being like, "Oh, they're done," you didn't watch last week. That had to show you something. How did you process what they did last week? I get the previous 3 weeks and the way they were trending, but then tournament playing in 3 straight days, you got to fit that in there somewhere. So don't be all just negative, like, "Oh, no chance." But yeah, they're a 5 seed. They got all those other things working against them. The turnovers make me a little, I would say, nervous about Michigan's prospects. So what I hope happens is that Yale beats Texas A&M, and that Michigan is able to beat San Diego. That's not going to be a shock. I expect it to happen, and then I would expect Michigan to beat Yale. And so we could be sitting here and on Monday talking about U of M being in the Sweet 16. How about that? So, couple reminders. Tomorrow night after the game, we'll be with you. I always take I don't think on Friday there's going to be there's going to be games on. I don't foresee myself being here for a 2:00 show. However, I would say check your listings, because if there's something going on and it works in the time frame and it's with spring football, I may make a trip to Ann Arbor, and then I'll want to come on and do a podcast about the information that I learned, even if it's a small bit of info on spring practice. So check your YouTube channel. If you're not a subscriber, subscribe, because then I think if you subscribe, when we go live, it shows right up on your phone. You're like, "Hey." And then you can always, after the fact, go back and check it out too. So we'll talk with you tomorrow night after the game, and we'll be on till, early in the morning. And that's what's going to happen. Well, let's look at some of lastly, just some basketball picks here. Richard is talking about Michigan being into the Sweet 16 and Michigan State into the Elite 8. His only predictions. Okay. Ferris looking at those quad 1 wins, noting that UCSD has 1 and Michigan has 12. And those quad 1 wins didn't mean a whole lot when it came down to seeding, did it? Which is, it was just one of the things that I guess that they were looking at. Mr. Martini, Michigan has to have a huge rebounding advantage going into this. Well, because of their height compared to the other team's height. Yeah, hopefully Michigan doesn't turn the ball over like the Purdue game, and they rebound like they did against Maryland, and they persevere like they did against Wisconsin. Richard, he only likes MSU for the tournament. The only time he's big on MSU. Well, I'm all right with that. All right. That some people can't handle it, Richard. So you're down in Florida, I believe. Around here, it just becomes. It just depends. It can be the state winning a game or two games can be Spartan fans can then be insufferable. But I can handle it myself. But I'll speak for the majority of Michigan fans in that this tournament, the number one thing to root for is Michigan to win. The number two thing to root for is Michigan State to lose. I think that's how. Number three thing, whatever your bracket says. There's been no more of an accurate statement today, or certainly tomorrow, or over the next 4 days than Rip saying that I look like I'm in need of some wings and blue cheese. You are right. Let's go. I think Friday we'll be taking care of those cane sugars. Coaching is key. Well, if coaching's key, Michigan's doing all right in that department. Here's a prediction from Michigan Go Blue. 1, 2, 3, 4. Michigan to the Sweet 16 with Omaha over St. John's. Look at that. I love it. Enjoy it. I like these next 4 days, starting tomorrow, as the best 4 days consecutively in the sports calendar, bar none. Labor Day weekend with football is close. The start of the Stanley Cup playoffs is up there, but nothing does it for me like the first 4 days of the NCAA tournament. So I am going to enjoy it. I hope you do as well. We will see you tomorrow night after the Michigan game. Until then, so long.